Good afternoon. I'm Kavino Abevikram from the Aeronautics Society of Royal College, Colombo 7, and I will be your host today. I'd like to welcome our principal, Mr. M.V.S. Gunatilaka, the Senior Master of Clubs and Societies, Mr. T.D.C.P. Amaratunga, our teaching charge, Mr. W.H.A.D. Sumanga, members of the Prefects Council of Royal College, our chief guest for the event, Group Captain Dushantha Wijesinghe, as well as President and top board of the Aeronautics Society. And last but not least, I would like to welcome all of our participants present today to Mayday'21. Before we start today's event, I would like to remind our participants to keep their microphones muted and refrain from typing in the chat throughout the event. Optionally, we request you to keep your video on for a more interactive session. We will be having a Q&A session afterwards to answer any and all of your questions. First, I would like to introduce you to our honorary guest speaker, Group Captain Dushantha Wijesinghe of the Sri Lankan Air Force is a senior graduate in aeronautical engineering and holds a master's degree in strategic and defense studies. Captain Wijesinghe possesses instructional and teaching experience at both Sri Lanka Air Force and CASASL approved Part 147 technical training centers. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Group Captain Dushantha Wijesinghe to commence the air crash investigation session. On to you, Captain Wijesinghe. Should you need any assistance, I'll be here.
All right, thank you. I hope that everybody can hear me. And right, am I clear to everybody?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Right. I'm my qualification to conduct this lecture was I did my aircraft accident investigation in Pakistan in 2014. So from that, I'll be teaching this module, especially for the Air Force and for the Kotalawala Defense University, the graduates. Right. So without further ado, let me start the lecture. For today, you are going to witness the basic the procedures of air accident investigation in general, but we are not going to touch deeply on the theory parts, but I will explain it in general, especially the commercial aviation accident investigation. Right, the military aircraft accident investigation will differ from that, but follow the same theories. So the commercial aviation is the vast area. There are every countries operate the commercial aircraft. So we will talk about the procedure, right? So basically, I designed this lecture for the Aeronautical Society of the Royal College, and I will would like to express my kind regards to the president of the society and the principal of the Royal College for inviting me for this lecture. Right, let us start with what is an aircraft accident, right? So the accident definition is given in the ICAO Annex 13, right? ICAO is the International Civil Aviation Organization, which they have already published 19 annexes regarding the aircraft operation, the commercial aircraft operation, right? So here the Annex 13 is the aircraft accident investigation and procedures. Now, if you can see the screen, so the occurrence associated with operation of aircraft, right? So there are three categories of occurrences that are to be described, that is already described in the Annex 13, right? Which that the any person between the time any person board the aircraft with the intention of traveling or with the intention of departing a place until such time as all such persons have disembarked. So a person is fatally or seriously injured due to the incident or accident in the aircraft, and the aircraft sustained damages or structural failures. Maybe the aircraft completely can be destroyed in an accident, or it can be few damages to the structure which may be recoverable in a period of time, right? And the other thing is the aircraft is missing or is completely inaccessible. That means if you can recall some of the incident happened in the recent past, the Malaysian airline MH370 incident, right? The aircraft is still missing. There are no clues about the passengers, or sometimes if the aircraft crash into the deep sea, which is not recoverable, right? So the ICAO has defined the aircraft accident in these three categories. So let us see the the small video clip about what are the things or how the accident investigation is done, and what are the things that you should be keep in your mind when you board into an aircraft.
One of the things which people seem to believe is that air crashes inevitably end in the death of everybody on board. That just isn't true. Sometimes you can have a really nasty accident in which the aircraft is written off. It will never fly again. It's totally wrecked, and yet everybody on board survives. Then there's the more common kind of serious accident in which most people on board survive, but some don't. The information that you can get from a series like Air Crash Investigation is how you can be one of the ones that can survive.
Stop! There he is! Stop!
Studies have been done into who survives accidents to try and make airplanes actually more survivable machines, make it more likely that more people will survive. They're people who fly often and are familiar with the environment in which they fly. When I get on board an aircraft, I count the number of seat rows to the exits behind me and the exits in front of me. One of the things you've got to remember when you get on board, there you are in a nice, warm, lit cabin, anticipating a pleasant flight and some decent on-board service. But if something goes wrong, you could be in a totally dark aircraft. You could be landing on sea at night.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
The aircraft will almost certainly be damaged, and in darkness you're going to have to know how you're going to get out of that aircraft. You really should take an interest in your own safety, no matter what you're doing, and however unlikely it is that you're going to come to grief, you should take an interest in survival. Air Crash Investigation, the series, is going to perform a very, very useful task, because the investigations which we're looking at here are the reason why accidents happen less and less and less. They're also the reason why aeroplanes are becoming more survivable.
Air France 358, slow your final approach speed.
just remember that the reason why they're less likely to happen to you is because an air crash investigation took place and tried to make sure that something like that would never happen again.
Right. With that, we will move into the purpose of air accident investigation. So earlier, it was to find the fault with the individuals or the organizations and the procedures. But later, the Civil Aviation Organization realized that that is not to find fault with an individual or organization, but to find the root cause to how not to repeat them in future. The sole objective of the investigation of accident or incident shall be prevention of accident and incident. So if you see the number of accident happens and what are the actions they have been taken by the manufacturers of aircraft and the policymakers like the International Civil Aviation Organization and the individual countries have strengthened the reliability of air transport. And the other thing is not the purpose of air accident investigation is to apportion blame or liability to anybody. That is to find the fault, not fault with any individuals, as I said earlier, but to prevent any incident or accidents in future, right? So that was the main aim of the ICAO and the Annex 30. And there are outcome of accidents. Now, if we can see, there are negative and positive results. First of all, let us see what are the negative results, right? Injury and possible death. Injury to human being, basically, the death mean it is not recoverable, and the permanent disabilities to passengers traveling inside the aircraft and the passengers on the land or on the surface or on the water. Then the damages to the equipment and property. As you know, the aircraft cost of aircraft is very huge. Like it is like costing millions of dollars, right? So when it happen and damage the equipment or property, so the recovery will not be possible. It will cost a huge amount of money for the organization, which sometimes would never recover, like Malaysian Airlines. The litigation cost for the legal actions and the possible citations. Now you have to produce the documents, whatever the evidence, right, to claim the insurance. Then it will result in loss of productivity in the organization. People will get discouraged or demoralized, right? And it will be a major moral factor, right, for the all people who are involved in the aviation industry. Not only the pilot, there are engineers, air traffic controllers, logistic people, ground handlers, right? So that will affect the whole people's morale of this industry. Now, with that, we will see what are positive results of outcome of accident. Now, the accident investigation. As you saw in the previous video, they say the investigation is really a must to find the fault or find the root cause, which we say in the aeronautical language, and prevent repeat of accident. Now, if we can prevent any accident similar to previous accident, right, now it is the basic intention of the investigation, right? If we cannot prevent any repeatable accident, it is a fault of whatever the policymakers and the designers. And we can change to safety programs, right? So the ICAO Annex 19, they have introduced in like 3 years back, which say what is the safety procedure of airline or the aviation organization that should follow to prevent any accident or incidents, right? Then it can change the procedures, right? Whatever the existing procedures can be changed. Your maintenance procedures, if the pilots, they are controlling procedures, right? Where there is a term called cockpit resource management, how to manage the resources in the cockpit, how to handle the emergencies, right? Then it will affect to change the equipment design. Basically, after an investigation, if the investigators find the fault with the equipment or the design of the aircraft, so manufacturers will change the equipment design. Then we will move into the historical background a little bit, how this was started in the recent past. Now, the procedures for the accident investigation was initially laid down. It goes back to 1928 by the committee called U.S. National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. Right? If you see, it was the time before the Second World War. Right? So from after First World War, they have realized that it is very important for the investigation because there were a lot of aircraft were damaged and destroyed during the war. They required accident investigators to consider, right, what are the immediate and underlying factors of accidents in order to establish and to find the root causes or to blame for its occurrences. Then they have introduced a kind of credit system, right, for to weight the what are the factors affecting for the accidents, right? So that will they will give some weight for some of the casual factors like maintenance, the pilot errors, and to find the overall culpability. For an example, now there are 70% of the accident result in they have with the collection of data and analyzing, they have realized that there are 70% of the accidents are due to pilot errors or mishandling, and some of the 30% of the result due to the environmental factors like adverse weather conditions, right, flying in unauthorized areas, likewise. But if we generally go back in to 1980s, before 1980s, lot of accident happened due to mechanical failures or the design factors. But later on, the manufacturers develop or design, they have changed their design and developed their the mechanical factors. And after that, there were a lot of accidents due to human errors or mishandling the aircraft or neglecting some of the procedures, standard procedures, and the set patterns. Then in 1944, there was a convention drafted called the Chicago Convention, right? So that set the procedures and process how this the international civil aviation should be uh, conducted, or it should how it should run this process all over the world. Now these procedures and rules to be responded by the contracting states. Now the contracting state are the states who have signed the ICAO, this Chicago Convention. In that era, those countries were the countries who have signed for the United Nations, right? So those states called the contracting states, and they have laid down the standard and recommended practices they have developed, and the accident investigation division they have introduced in 1946 and around 1947, and that was later transferred into Annex 13 of the convention, right? So I said there are 19 annexes, and the 13 was the accident investigation. Now let us see what is the International Civil Aviation Organization, right? Now this was the agency of United Nations which is responsible for the civil aviation, right, all over the world. And they have signed the Chicago Convention in 1944. Now, an objectives of this organization to develop the international standards, or what you call the principles for the international air travel navigation, and this is to develop the international air transport, right? If we don't have the international air routes, we cannot fly as what we want in country to country. There are time zones, are lapsing. So likewise, they have developed the international standard for the world commercial aviation. Now these standards and regulations are must for the safe and efficient air transport in the world, right? So this embedded in all of the field of civil aviation and the contracting states. They came up with like these are the standards, these are the practices that you have to adapt if you are joined for the international commercial aviation. And this facilitate the adoption of international air laws. There are laws related to international commercial aviation, and they promoted this to accept all of the members of United Nations. Right. Then they undertook the extensive work in areas like reporting aircraft accident and incident data and automation of air traffic services. Now, if we don't have the data, right, if you see in these days, we are much worried about the COVID-19 data. Likewise, if we don't have the data related to accidents, we cannot analyze and we cannot come up with good recommendations, right? So that they have came up to every contracting state to report their incident and accident to their civil aviation organization in the respective country, and then they have to report it to the ICAO. Right, these conventions allow state to generate their own rules. Like if we consider the Sri Lanka, we have to generate our own rules according to the Annex 13 about the how we conduct the accident investigations, right? So these practices and procedures were laid down in document 9620, what is called the Manual of Accident Investigation, right? So the primary focus of this Annex 13 was differed from the initial the procedure set by the U.S. National Committee for Aeronautics in 1928. And they came up with not to find the fault or apportion the blame for aircraft accident, but to find a mechanism for every participant in the industry to not to repeat any mistakes in future, right? So this includes pilots, the manufacturers, engineers, all the regulatory agencies like Federal Aviation Authority in USA, EASA, European Aviation Safety Organization. Likewise, everybody come together and they adapt a standard procedure. Right? If we talk about the history, now it goes back to 1785. Now, the first fatal aviation accident was a crash of the air balloon, right? That was in 1785. Now, this was the inventor of the balloon, the Rosary. So, and the occupant was killed in that accident. That was the recorded the history of fatal accident in air. Then if we to talk about the 19th century, the aircraft was discovered by the Wright brothers, now which we call the first powered aircraft. Now that was a Wright Model A. Now they came to fly in the US Virginia state. In September 17, 1908, now his aircraft was crashed, right? Who was the passenger? He was a Lieutenant Thomas Selfridge from the Army Signal Corps. Now he was killed when the Wright brother, one of the Wright brothers, were flying the aircraft in the initial testing time. Now he is, if you can see the photo, now he is the gentleman born in February 1882, was the first lieutenant of the US Army and the first person to die in an airplane accident or the crash. Right, and he is the first active member of the US military to die in an air crash while on duty. Right, so he was the passenger when the Ovilly Wright is flying his model. Now he flew as a passenger and he died due to the air crash. Now here you can see very rare picture that the people who are trying to take this person out from the wreckage, which we call the once the aircraft hit the ground, so they are trying to get him out from the aircraft. So in 1909, the person called Frank Lamb issued the first airplane report accident. He is also from Army, right? Now he is the person who called as the father of the air crash investigation, right? Now the Thomas Selfridge, he died during the first powered flight, and when the debris was, even before the debris was cleared away, now the first Lieutenant Lamb began the investigation of wreckage, and 5 months after the incident, he issued the first airplane accident report. Right, this was the first recorded history. Right, so what he has done, without having any idea, he interviewed the spectators, the people who came to see the aircraft is flying. He interviewed them and he noted what is the what they saw. Now for this we call them witness, right? So he wrote in his report that gave him the impression of being a reliable and one of the foremost aviation theories of the day, right? So most of them, and few of them, they have verified what the Lamb himself had seen, and he found initially he saw the propeller blade, damaged propeller blade on ground, and he thought that due to the damage to the propeller blade and failure of propeller is the reason for the aircraft accident, right? So he examined the broken propeller and he took the measurements at the scene, right? So that is one of the important thing in any accident scene. So we are not going to jump into the accident scene and try to find the survivors, but it should be done very carefully. He took the broken propeller blade and took the measurements, right? Then based on he interviewed the Ovilly Wright also. He got his whatever the recollection, his memory, and he also concluded that because of this broken propeller, this plane became uncontrollable, and that led to the crash. Now he wrote in his report, is the opinion to the excessive vibration of due to that the wire or the portion that's in the front ladder and the right hand propeller came into contact, right? So because of that, it resulted in damaging the wire or the blade, right? So the clicking, which Wright referred to being due to the damaged blade striking the wire lightly several times, and when the vibration increased, struck it hard enough to pull out the propeller from the socket. Now it was the reason for breaking of the propeller. Now after that, the Wright brothers developed his aircraft and again returned to the Fort Mayor for flying. And the first lieutenant Lamb became the instructor of that plane later, and he was the second certified military pilot in the aviation history. Right. So that was the history about the aviation, and we will move into the investigation strategy. Now, how we do an investigation in a very basic layman language. Now we should know what is the need for investigation. If it is a minor incident, right, we can come up with the report. If we can find the reason, we should not investigate the incident deeply, right? So then we have to control the scene. Mean we should not allow anybody to go to the scene and disturb the evidences, right? That is controlling the scene. And we have to gather the fact. There are facts that can be perished due to environment condition, due to snow, due to rain, due to fire, right? So that is those evidence we call the perishable evidence, right? So it is very important to gather facts when there is an accident. Then we can analyze the data one by one with your findings, right? So then we can establish the causes or reason for the accident and what happened based on your evidence, right? And for the eyewitness or from the flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder, you can collect the evidence and establish the causes. Then we have to write a report. That is the important legal document that we submit for the authority from the beginning to end. And then at the latter part of your report, they suggest what are the corrective action in the mode of recommendation. What should be done to prevent such kind of accident in future, right? So this is the basic procedure of the investigation, which we call the strategy, right? Let us move into the ICAO Annex 13 quickly. Now this is the annex, the outlook. This you can download it from the open source in the web. If you can Google, you can find this. And when an accident happens involving an international civil aviation the flight, this annex set out the rules and regulation how to do the notification, investigation, and how to come up with report, right? The notification mean if let us call the foreign aircraft accident in the Sri Lanka, we have to notify the incident immediately. Now, in that case, we are the state of occurrence. In that terminology is used in this annex. Now, we are the state of occurrence. We have to appoint an investigation board, and we have to notify the country that the aircraft registered, right? So this is this also set out the what is the procedures should be and how to conduct the investigation, and what are the parties that should involve in this the investigation, and how to investigate, right? And how the final result should be reported, right? So we can invite people from the outside. Outside mean we can invite representatives from the manufacturer, representative from the ICAO, right? Representative from the aircraft registered country, So for them, we call they are the accredited representatives. So we can invite them to participate in the investigation, and that is their legal right to participate in the investigation. Right, this annex contain 8 chapters. Right here you can see it is in general. Right, so definitions, applicability, and notification, how to notify, how to do the investigation, and how to prepare the final report is given with the example in the annexes. ADREP reporting means accident incident data reporting, right? How to report accident incident data to the ICAO, and what are the accident preventive measures that can be taken by any country or any organization, right? So these are the chapters. Based on this manual, we do the investigation. Right? Let us see what is the legislation or the authority in Sri Lanka to do the investigation. Right? That is the Civil Aviation Authority of Sri Lanka. If any aircraft crash in the territory of Sri Lanka, maybe a foreign or local, they are responsible. Right? So the administrative functions carried out by Accident Investigative Unit and Aviation Safety Monitoring Unit, that is established in Civil Aviation Authority, which is situated in the BIA, close to BIA, right? Right. Then the AAIB, which we call the Accident Investigation Board, will be appointed by the Director General Civil Aviation, which we call the DGCA, based on the legal authority given by the Civil Aviation Act number 14 of 2010. Right. In addition, we can always invite investigators to participate from overseas, right? So that is, as I said, it is their legal right to participate in the accident. If any relative of the victims requested to participate in the accident, we also allow them to participate during the investigation process, because they have a legal right to know what happened to the aircraft. So they can they claim the compensation from the insurance companies likewise. Now let us see what are the renowned accident aviation investigative agencies in the world, right? So first, Air Accident Investigation Bureau, that is in UK, and the second one, Transport and Safety Board in Canada, right? So that is the other one is NTSB, the National Transport and Safety Board in United States, and the ATSB, Australian Transport Safety Bureau, right? The BEA is the accident investigation branch in France. So these are the main agencies in the world where they carry out not only the aircraft accident investigation, even the road and marine accident investigation. Here in Sri Lanka, we don't do about the road accident investigation, but they do most of this investigation, not only the air crash investigation, right? So let us see one of the major accident that had occurred in the early 70s, right, which uh, was a turning point of investigation, right? The first aircraft accident in which 2 or more people died happened in 1974 March 3, when 346 people on board died in a Turkish airline flight crash, right? Now, up to 2020 April, there is a 33 major accident. There are number of accident happen, but major 33 accident or aviation incident happen in which 200 and more people die. Right? There are incident happen. There, which we call the people died is, lower than the 200. Now this is the aircraft, right? The Turkish airline flight 981. That was a McDonnell Douglas DC-10, which has a three engine. You can see there is a one engine in the empennage. Empennage. I hope that you know that terminology. That is the rudder and the elevators. Collectively, we call the empennage. And the other name was the nickname of this type of aircraft is TriStar. Three engines, one in the tail, right? So this aircraft crash in that was aircraft is flying from Paris to London, and this was crash due to decompression, sudden decompression due to opening of the cargo door, right, during flight. Now, due to that, because of the opening of cargo door, the sudden decompression occurred, and that created a hole in the fuselage of the aircraft, right? Now, the control tubes for the rudder and elevators is running through the cabin floor, right? Which resulted the pilot, the aircraft became uncontrollable and crashed, killing all the passengers, right? Now, this was a scheduled flight from Istanbul to London Heathrow, right, with the immediate stop in Paris, an intermediate stop in Paris. And this was crash in Ermanville Forest outside Paris, killing all the passengers, more than 300. Now, this is a very famous air disaster known as Ermanville air disaster. By the complete pressure, normal in-flight pressure in the cabin, right? So to prevent opening of the door, they have introduced a special latching system. If I say it is a special locking mechanism, they have introduced, right? So the door was at the rear side of the aircraft, and the horizontal stabilizer and the elevator control cables at the rear part of the aircraft was running from the ground of the aircraft. Then they were damaged, and these disengaged control cables made the pilot to impossible to control the aircraft pitch angles. Right, pitch angle mean the pitch is controlled by nose up and down movement of the aircraft is controlled by the pitch movement.
Aircraft's motion can be described as rotation around three axes.
We will.
These three axes are the vertical axis, the longitudinal axis.
You know the three axes of the aircraft, so I will skip this one. So the damage, or if you can't control the rudder and the vertical stabilizer, basically you will lose the complete control of the aircraft. Now, what the investigators found that the support plate which prevent force closing of the locking handle and the window when the door is not fully latched was installed on the door, right? So let us see whatever the maintenance record or the modification done by this aircraft the engineers, that they found that the support plate has already been installed. It was not missing, but they found that due to the prior to the cargo door latch was not properly locked, right? So, but because of the incorrect rigging of the door lock mechanism, that was not indicated to the cabin pilot. Otherwise, if the door is not properly sealed, there is an indication coming in the cockpit, right? Now here you can see the door mechanism, right? Now there is, if it is properly locked, I will show you the simulation. If it is properly locked, the stop hole and the torque tube will rest on this stop. But if it is not properly closed, the lock will remain like this, right? So this is a little bit too technical. So where you can see how the door hinge and door actuator is connected. This is called latch. There are drive linkages which support the locking mechanism, right? The underlying factor they found, the sequence of event leading to the accident was the incorrect engagement of the door latching mechanism or the door locking mechanism. When we lock, there's a locking pin and it will indicate the door locked and completely sealed. Right, so this is also a little bit too technical, where you can see if it is lock, complete lock position, this distance is 297 millimeters, because if it is wrongly latched, this was reduced, right? This resulted in the torque tube not rotating far enough to move the latch to the position called over center position, right? When it is over center position, the stop needle come and it locks the door latch properly, right? Additionally, the door lock pin were not properly rigged, and to engage had the torque tubes were properly rotated. So let us see the animation.
The force transmitted to the actuator attachment bolts is the product of the force on the latches and the position of the lever arms of the system. When the over-center position is achieved, the latching is correct. The lock pins are engaged and the system is irreversible. The latch cannot be forced up, and the pressurization force only reinforces the latch strength. On the other hand, the incomplete extension of the actuator shaft makes the engagement of lock pins impossible. When the over-center position is not achieved, the latching is incorrect. The force of the latch increases as the arms move away from the dead center position. In the accident case, the door remained closed as long as the two bolts attaching the actuator to the door structure withstood the increasing pressurization force. When the two bolts gave way, the latches opened and the door blew suddenly away after breaking the top shaft of the door actuator.
Right, where you can see, due to incorrect locking mechanism, because due to the pressure inside the aircraft, the attachment bolt of the latching mechanism failed, and this resulted in opening or blowout of the opening of the rear or the bottom lock, and the door suddenly went out, right? Now this is again a little bit the too technical, so I will shift this side. Now let us see what happened when these two attachment bolt fail. The detached latch that was enabled the latch hook to slip the spools resulted in sudden opening of the cargo door, right? This was the mechanism. They said due to the pressure and the incorrect door locking mechanism, it suddenly released. Now the person who have closed the cargo door, he claimed or he confirmed that he has locked the door without any difficulties, right? If it is not in the correct position, it should not be locked. Now it is the system should be designed in such a way, right? But the person who locked the door told the investigators that he has done his job. Now this was the door later found after the accident, right after the crash. They found the door and they found all the locking, the whatever the remaining mechanism for the took to the lab for the investigation, right? So issues related to this latch mechanism include the human errors, then the design, interface design, and the engineering responsibility. So those are the negligence or the root causes for this incident. Right, the control cables for the rear control surfaces also routed through the floor. අපි කියනවා මේ aircraft එකේ ground එක යටින් තමයි මේ control cables ඇදලා තිබ්බේ. Right? මේ එයාක්‍රාෆ්ට් එකේ ෆියුසලාජ් එකෙන් කෑල්ලක් කැඩිලා ගියාම මේ control cables කැඩිලා ගිහිල්ලා pilot control එක නැති වෙනවා. So that was the failure. That was the result of the collapse of the flow. Because of that, the control cables were damaged. Right now, this is a similar incident happened in another aircraft where you can see the flow is not loaded heavily. Right, later on they have realized that the flow also loaded with passengers, and because of sudden the pressure difference, this resulted in collapsing of flow. Right, that came a catastrophic failure. Right, so what happened later, on the hatch were fail for any reason, there was a possibility the plane would be lost. Now the equipment should not design in that way. If it is fail, there is a should be a fail-safe mechanism. If the aircraft should be landed safely by another emergency system, right? But what happened here, because of their incorrect design, the complete aircraft destroyed. Now, in addition, the Douglas company or the manufacturer, they have chosen a new type of latch for this cargo door system. Right, so this is the aircraft image where you can see the door, how it is open, the aircraft. Right, so this kind of catastrophic failure, right, as a result of overall the damage, they have discovered in 1969, and actually that was occurred on ground in 1970. Right, but this does not realize that this will give the catastrophic or damaging effect, right, due to right, what happened, they have ignored these the early warnings. Right, they have realized that they thought that this was a small problem and we can repair it on ground. Right, so they have neglected that reason. Right, so after this crash, that was completely redesigned, right, prevent them from moving into the wrong position. Now they have improved the design, and this was the locking system was mechanically upgraded, right, upgraded in such a way that it will not open by any kind of pressure failure. I mean, the high pressure situation inside the aircraft, right, if it was even improperly latched. Right, so here you can see the video.
Investigators, they also suggested that vents be put into the floors of all DC-10s. This would rapidly allow the pressurized cabin air to equalize without collapsing the floor.
Right, they have introduced the holes to the cabin floor where during decompression situation, the holes will allow the equalize the pressure between the passenger cabin and the cargo cabin. Right, that was a recommendation after the crash. So Federal Aviation Authorities USA, right, they have ordered further changes to the aircraft cargo doors, not only the DC-10 but the similar type of aircraft like Lockheed and Boeing 747. Right, these changes include requiring vents be cut into the cabin floor, that is the vent holes, to equalize the pressure between the two cabins if there is a sudden opening of the door. Right, so in that case the flow will not collapse and the pressure will be equalized in both sections, and it can be controlled by the control cables running through the ground. The cabin floor will not get disturbed. Right, so even most of the controls of the third engine also ran through the cabin floor. Right, with that we have come to the end of our presentation. So to summarize, I would say the air accidents are fatal. some of them can be recoverable and most of them cannot be recoverable. Right? The possibility of survival is depend on the type of accident, right? Whether it is a major accident, minor accident, or an incident. And the accident investigation provides us ways to prevent reoccurrences. The most important factor, purpose of this process, and introduce any modifications to the airframe or the systems, improve the policies of the organizations and the procedures of international air navigation, and to find out what are the human factor effects versus maintenance, design and engineering. So human are the critical people, even though we have manufactured most of the fail safe systems, they will overcome these procedures because of the negligence or the overconfidence, right? So with that, we have come to the end of our lecture today. So I hope that we went through the basic the definition of the accident and whatever the basic procedures, what are the renowned agencies in the world, what is the regulatory procedure, what was the ICAO, and the Annex 13, how we do the investigation, and one of the major air accident in 1970s, right? With that, I will end my lecture. So if you have any questions, you are welcome.
Thank you, Captain Wijesinghe. We will be uploading all of these recordings to our YouTube channel, Royal College Aeronautics, in case you missed any of the days or if you want to refresh your memory. And now, we would like to begin the question and answer session. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand and type your question to the host and wait until we ask you to unmute.
Sir, what is the use of a black door? Like black box?
Right. Even though we call it a black, it is in orange color. That is the flight data recorder, right? That is all of the flight details and the flight parameters, to say specifically, is recorded in that the box, right, where it can stand to very high temperatures and it can stay in the deep water for long period without getting any damages, right? So it was the main the evidence during an aircraft accident, which we can find what happened to the aircraft during the flight or during the incident. Complete the aircraft details like engine, oil pressure, temperature, and the other flight parameters. Everything is recorded and can be retrieved in a lab. There are special labs to retrieve the data.
So what's Annex 30?
Now it is a document in a layman language. It is a document as your school textbook. It is a book written how to do the investigation and what is to do during an accident. Everything is written there. right? You don't have to by heart that. If there is an accident, you can always refer that book. So it will guide you what to do. That is basically like your textbooks in school.
So why is the McDonald's that I mean the cargo door designed to open outwards? Like, is there a reason for that?
Yes. Now the designers thought that if we design the door to be open to the inside of the aircraft, there is a huge space is required, right? If you see, like rather than a sliding door,
Okay, sir. Thank you. Sir, can the two displays of the pilot and co-pilot show different information?
no, most of the previously uh, there are systems were designed. There is a one control panel for both captain and co-pilot, right? If they see different the panels, it is very difficult for them to concentrate, right? So there is a one console in front of the pilot and co-pilot where both of them can see if there is any changes to the system. So if there is any difference or any abnormal warnings given in any system of the aircraft, right? But if you see now the latest aircraft designed by Airbus and Boeing, nowadays they have very sophisticated systems which we call the glass cockpits, where you will find all the details in 2 3 computer screens, right? But mostly the design for general the common warnings will be visible to both captain and co-pilot.
Why are they not doing the flight in the same material of the black box?
Sorry, Puta, it was not very clear.
Why are they not doing the flight in the same material of the black box?
Right. Now this if we manufacture the aircraft or the airframe, we call the fuselage in a very heavy metal, we required a very high powered engine to lift the aircraft from the ground, right? That is why we required very lightweight material but with heavy strength, right? So initially we have the most of the aircraft were manufactured with aluminum alloy, that is a very high strength but lightweight material, right? Now we have a very lightweight and very high strength material called composites, right? So that is why we cannot manufacture aircraft from the material, same material which we use for the kind of black box. So it will affect to the aircraft weight, and it required a very high power engine for the aircraft to take off with all other weight.
Yes, I think that is all the questions we have time for today. But don't worry, we also have the next session on October 1st. As and now as we finish our Q&A session, I would like to deliver the vote of thanks. Today's event would not have been possible without the help of some very special persons, so I would like to thank our principal, Mr. M.V.S. Gunatilaka, the Senior Master of Clubs and Societies, Mr. T.D.C.P. Amaratunga, our teacher in charge, Mr. W.H.A.D. Sumanga, members of the Prefects Council of Royal College, and also a very special thank you goes out to our chief guest, Group Captain Dushantha Wijesinghe, for educating us on this exciting topic. Also, let us not forget the top board of the Aviation Society for their continuous efforts to ensure the success of this event. And lastly, I would like to thank everyone here for their participation today. I hope to see you next time at the second lecture on October 1st. Have a pleasant evening.
Right, thank you.